We are both born and raised Hoosiers. We have been married for almost 11 years, and we have 2 boys, 5 and just turned 8. I had a miscarriage with my very first pregnancy, so that created a lot of anxiety for me in all of my pregnancies, but I was very adamant and making a conscious effort to not let the health anxiety control me this pregnancy. So they did the AFP NTD test, and those results, I was sitting in this room. They came through on my phone, and I immediately noticed that my results were abnormal. So they did get me in, but it took over a week for them to get me an appointment. We went on Wednesday, March 6th, 2023 at 1:45 in the afternoon. And they did a very intense ultrasound that probably lasted, the first portion of it, probably 45 minutes. And then they brought in, the tech left, and they brought in, she returned with another tech who had been at St. Vincent for 30 plus years, and she explained that they needed to get better visuals of the baby's spine, so they were going to need to push very hard on my stomach and manipulate the fetus. And
for lay people, you don't really know what you're looking at on an ultrasound screen, and so it puts you in a pretty tough position to guess and try to, you're trying to figure out in real time what's happening, what you're looking at, what does that mean for your future and for the pregnancy future and for Abby's future. And so it's a torturous place to be, to try to figure it out on your own. And so sometimes it's easier to just wait to hear from the experts. And
so it was just the tech. The doctor never came in to the ultrasound room. Once they finished the ultrasound, they had us moved into a little, meeting room. But she sat down the reading, and it was about spina bifida and not just hydronephrosis, but that was the one portion of it that I could remember. And that was for us to kind of take home. They also gave me pictures from the sonogram. The techs did. I forgot to mention that. And she sat down and began to talk to us about what concerned her about the ultrasound. She confirmed that the baby's spine there was an opening at the bottom of the baby's spine, and that the head shape was the spine was secondary to the head shape. The head shape was the most concerning thing to her, as it was shaped like a lemon, with very abnormally large, frontal lobe development, but not, when I say development, what I mean is size. I don't mean that they were able to see brain activity or anything like that.
Yeah, when I think we found ourselves in a spot where we were being asked to make really tough decisions with really limited information. And so that was sort of our biggest fear going into that ultrasound appointment, was what do we do if they say we think there's something wrong, we don't know what it is, we don't know how bad. That was one conversation, right? And so there is a part of me, and I think a part of us, that is grateful for the clarity that we got out of that conversation, regardless of how devastating and tragic the outcome was. We were very grateful to feel clarity around what we were looking at, what the reality was, what our options were, both here and in other places. And so, that we had a lot of discussion leading up to it about, okay, kind of if this is sort of what we learned, then this is kind of what we feel comfortable with next steps. Here's what we're willing to do. Here's what we feel like is unfair to do. And then that was really the outcome that we feared the most, was what if we just don't know. The in utero neurosurgery option was also presented as a very, what should I say? Yeah, exploratory in nature, especially initially, with no real guarantee on the outcome or even the guarantee of access to intervene on what the issues were. So it was very much from the beginning presented as and felt like a long shot option, sort of grasping at straws to try to salvage something that couldn't be saved.
So I said, I'd like to talk about termination. We didn't need to have a sidebar conversation. He and I exchanged, I think, a look, and we both knew what the obvious answer was for us and our family.
I think anything else other than the next step is surgery. Here's the outcome we expect. Here are your chances of successful intervention. None of that was really on the table for us. It was very much a long shot, kind of last ditch effort. This is the other option, as opposed to just wait and see how it plays out naturally, which would have been a whole other level of devastating that I can't imagine for everyone. And there's certainly, they were very clear about the risks to both Abby and the fetus, and what that might look like with very little hope of improvement. And so that's kind of where we felt very clear on what our choices
And
were.
with our healthcare system, I'm never, that's all, when I'm waiting on someone to call me and the ball is not in my court, that's an anxious place to be, especially because she had started to kick recently. And so with every day that I remained pregnant, I could feel her moving more, and it just felt like I was in this torture that I couldn't escape from. Like I wasn't in control of my own body in any way. And she called me on my birthday and she said, "We need you to come in for an ultrasound." And I said, "Why? I just had an ultrasound yesterday, that took 90 minutes and I'm still sore and bruised from how hard they had to push with the wand." And so it wasn't for my health or my unborn child's health. It was for the legalities to satisfy Todd Rakita. Like this, it was not for my health care. It was not for my benefit at all. And so I thought I had no choice but to agree to a second ultrasound. They said, we can get you in today. Need you to come, at this time. And I said, fine. But there will be no screens on in mine or my husband's viewpoint. We will not look at any sonogram pictures. They wanted me to sit down with a genetic counselor. I asked again, why? What's the point? I've already done that. And they again told me to check the box for their attorneys. And so the nurse could tell that I was irate about the idea of having to sit through another extremely painful, both emotionally and physically, ultrasound. So she said, actually, hold on. I'm going to put you down for this appointment, but I'm going to call legal myself. So that gave me a little bit of hope that maybe they would make the exception. And at this point, I thought, I definitely am going to be able to do it here in this state, but there may be some red tape that I have to work through. And then the nurse called me back and said, no, they won't go for it. And so then she was like, but you can't, if you don't want to go through that, the trauma of having the second ultrasound, we could schedule you to go to Illinois. And at that point, I had the first thought of, that feels extreme, but we got that scheduled on March 7th, and the procedure was set for March 13th. But one thing that is important to note on the new Indiana law, one of the boxes that they have to check for the fetal abnormalities is that basically it's almost like they have to say that they know for a fact that the baby will pass within so many days of being born. How they would possibly be able to know that when these doctors who did, this is the best thing we have for pregnant women in monitoring the development of our unborn children is 40 ultrasounds. That's as advanced as we've gotten. And like I mentioned, the in utero surgeries, but again, that's exploratory. It's not like that's a science that they are just able to replicate over and over and over again. They were not able to provide us with 100% answers, and also with abortion now being politicized and governed by laws, the doctors are now watching their backs for liability exposure. So you look to your doctor to give you this confirmation and this guiding information of helping you make an informed decision for your health and your fetus's health. But we were given a lot of vague information and a sheet of paper with very vague, neural tube defect could lead to spina bifida, and spina bifida could lead to death. Could doesn't mean that it, there were no guarantees. There were no answers.
It's a frustrating place to make a clinical decision without feeling like you can ask your doctor what to do, right? For example, if I had diabetes and my blood sugar was uncontrolled, I could ask my doctor, what would you do? And they would say, I would take my insulin. And this is a situation where you can't just ask the doctor, what's the right thing to do? What should we do? What would you do? Because this is a topic and a treatment and intervention that you can't talk about like that. The option of in utero neurosurgery was presented because it was the only other option that's not termination. And so it felt like we know that termination isn't readily available here, and so this is the alternative, but very clearly not a good one and not a high likelihood of success.
That's when it really hit me of I felt like I was a fugitive. I felt, and as the daughter of a police officer, that was a really hard realization for me to sit with. I'm a born and raised Hoosier. My father was an elected sheriff of our home county. I have loved this state. I moved away for undergrad to North Carolina, and I came back here for my master's degree, and it's been my home. And I will tell you, in the last 24 months, we've never more seriously discussed relocating because the state doesn't care about me. They don't care about my well-being. They don't care about our health care.
A situation like ours shines light on the fact that the laws that are in effect do not achieve this desired outcome. They don't prevent abortion from happening. They don't prevent fetuses from dying. They don't prevent these really tragic and heartbreaking outcomes from happening. What it does do, though, is make it so that people who go through them feel
isolated.
You just feel the cruelty of it even more so because you're doing it alone and you are operating. Man, it just takes a moment in your life that is profoundly sad and heartbreaking, and I'm trying to navigate how to talk to my kids about this, who like love this person who doesn't exist yet, and as if that's not enough, I have to worry about if my wife is going to get arrested for taking care of herself, and that's what I want people to understand is that and I would just plead with those people, the people that are making these laws, just understand that it doesn't help further your agenda, your mission. We had an abortion. We still did it. We did it in a way that was more hurtful and cruel than it needed to be because that's what we had to do. But the outcome's the same, everybody. People are going to get the health care they need. I just don't understand the cruelty around it. And that's I think what I want people to understand more than anything is it doesn't protect anybody.
It's become very difficult to defend this state or feel pride in it because this state failed me miserably. That's what I feel. I feel absolutely failed and betrayed.